Every car behind me here is roughly 1.5 tons of metal, and they're traveling at speeds of roughly 100 k's an hour. All that's keeping them on the road is a driver and a steering wheel about this wide. It's kind of wild when you think about it. Tragically, 1,300 people die on our roads every year. But what we don't hear about is the number of people who survive a road crash but sustain serious injuries. That number is around 40,000 every year. I'm Reuben Styles, and this is Scar Tissue, a program about the hidden costs of surviving a serious road crash. Over the next hour, you'll meet 5 people from Canberra who were all just in their 20s when they were involved in a serious road crash. Each crash lasted seconds. The consequences will last a lifetime. They're 5 people who never thought this would be their story.
I absolutely lost in frustration, jumped straight into my car and virtually sped off, like bat out of hell, and passed out behind the wheel and crashed into the barricades.
If the hospital didn't have that amount of that correct blood, I wouldn't be here. I did die multiple times in that sort of first 24-hour period.
I ran into a light pole and I apparently hit my head on the steering wheel, and that caused the damage everywhere.
I can't quite remember much of that night, given how inebriated I was. The only thing I can remember is getting in the car, getting to a set of traffic lights, and then nothing.
I was picking up children from my side seat, and I was expecting that my car gonna stay inside the lanes as cruise is on and the lane assist is on, but somehow it didn't. My car fell with full speed inside the drainage system.
And you know, none of these stories start with a crash. They start with just normal, everyday life stuff that many of us go through.
The sort of child that I was quite out there, some would say. In my teens, I started drinking alcohol. Like, I'd use it as more of a cover-up for emotions and trying to deal with them, because I didn't really understand how to deal with emotions in a healthy manner. So I would drink, realise that that made you feel good momentarily, and so I'd use that as sort of a coping skill. And then in my later teens, I definitely lost interest in the things that I used to really enjoy, which was horse riding, playing the drums, piano, guitar, and all of that sort of taken out the window. It was work, make money, spend money. Spending money was something that I really enjoyed. I was good at it. And yeah, other things sort of took over my life. I was definitely on a warpath with myself. I was quite the train wreck.
That warpath Sherilyn talks about feels pretty familiar. Forgetting about the stuff you love, filling the space with other things, and telling yourself you're fine. Until one day it isn't. For Sherilyn, life changed forever on a typically normal day, saying goodbye to her boyfriend before heading out to lunch with a mate at the local pub. Except it wasn't really lunch.
Drank a lot of beers, and we went out to Captain's Flat, where I think we met at the bowling club. I don't know how long we were there for, but we got in the car and we were heading towards Queanbeyan. And as we've approached a particular part of Captain's Flat Road, what I'm led to believe is that the driver looked down to change a song. The car veered off the road for about 45 metres. Apparently, as the drivers looked up, we've approached a guardrail and pulled heavy down right hand on the steering wheel, which has spun the car around, hit the guardrail on the other side, flipped over a creek, nosedived into a paddock, rolled and slid, came to a stop. So there was alcohol involved, there was marijuana found in the system of the driver, and the distraction. To make matters worse, at the time of the accident, I had a vodka cruiser stubby just resting between my legs. And so at the time of impact, that smashed and caused damage to that area, which I've had to then also have parts of amputated later on at the hospital, because there was just glass busted throughout that area. Yes.
So Sherilyn was resuscitated a few times in her first 24 hours, from injuries seen through to helicopter retrieval, and then in the resuscitation area of our emergency department, there was family called in and friends to come and potentially have to say their farewells to Sherilyn.
I got a call from her mum, and as soon as she started speaking, I knew that something bad had happened. She told me that Sherilyn had been in a car accident and that she was fighting for her life. At that stage, they'd had to amputate the whole of her leg, and that if I wanted to come and potentially say goodbye to Sherilyn, I needed to make a decision to leave my family in Canberra and come up to the hospital in Canberra and, potentially say goodbye to my best friend.
We all know car crashes are brutal, but nothing can ever prepare you for something like that. And as we'll soon see, nothing can ever prepare your family and friends for that devastating moment when they first see you in hospital.
This is not some TV program. This is not some war thing that you see on TV or a movie. This is real, and that blood is your blood.
Welcome back to Scar Tissue, a program about what really happens when someone survives a serious road crash. Dylan Robinson was a mischievous kid who loved being outdoors. Didn't love school so much, but he loved fishing, camping, and swimming. Like most of us, by the time he was in his early 20s, he was in and out of jobs, in and out of relationships, a few hits and a few misses. But in Dylan's case, some of the misses were starting to stack up.
I ended up getting in the wrong crowd, spiraling down drinking. I had a lot of issues with parents trying to force me in a better life, with education and work, where I was just in a massive frustration, trying to get out of it. So I ended up finding myself in a drinking state, drinking every day, drinking on work nights, not going to work, always hungover, always drunk.
Like Dylan, Rory Warren was a kid who loved being outdoors and spending time at the beach. But as a kid with undiagnosed ADHD, Rory always found it tough to focus at school. Then he found a career path.
My first job was at Kmart in Tuggeranong, and that eventually morphed into me getting a general labour hire job, which eventually got me into getting an apprenticeship in cabinet making. I really enjoyed it, the cabinet making. I was already living on my own, had 2 cars of my own. Yeah, and then COVID hit, and suddenly there was nowhere near enough work to go around. And so my boss had to, unfortunately, let me go. Being let go, that hit me extremely hard. I pretty much lost the key factor to my independence. And I think that's what really broke me. It led me to spiral into depression. I coped by self-medicating a lot with alcohol and marijuana.
It sounds like Rory was on a one-way ride to self-destruction with no obvious off-ramp, and so was Dylan.
My life changed on the night of the 24th of November 2016. I went out with a mate to a club and had a substantial amount of alcohol. When I went out to have a cigarette, the bouncer wouldn't let me back in from heavy intoxication because I was too drunk. I absolutely lost in frustration, jumped straight into my car and virtually sped off, like bat out of hell, and then going along Vernon Circle where I passed out behind the wheel and crashed into the barricades, tearing about 50 metres and spinning 360 in the air. Ended up leading to the left off an underpass on the road, which would have been about a 15-metre drop where I could have more or less gone to my sudden death if I continued any further.
Going into hospital, seeing your son with a tube down their throat, helping them breathe, tubes coming out of their side to drain collapsed lungs, and a frame keeping the leg together with flesh. You can see the flesh and the bone. Very confronting indeed. This is not some TV program. This is not some war thing that you see on TV or a movie. This is real, and that blood is your blood. That bone, that broken body is what you brought into the world. It's not easy.
Mum ended up getting a call for the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, to indicate that yes, there might be a likelihood that I would die. She had 5 minutes to get to the hospital because the trauma that I had from the crash, I had massive blood loss, and I'm just very fortunate to be alive. Very fortunate.
For Rory, the details of his crash remain very blurry.
On the 23rd of March 2020, I self-medicated to the point of smoking copious amounts of marijuana and drinking a full bottle of bourbon, driving drunk and crashing. I lost control by going over the speed limit at a calculated 180 kilometers an hour.
The police actually said they were surprised that he hadn't had an incident before the incident that actually happened, because he was driving that fast that they were, the fact that he had control of the car for so long was, a mystery to them. They think he hit the curb and the car just took off. It basically left the ground and flew.
The vehicle came apart during that process, leaving, the police said the engine was found about 75 metres further ahead from the body of the car and burst into flames.
So what they think is that he actually flew out backwards, so he was face up to the sky, backwards, and landed on his back on the road.
I can't quite remember much of that night, given how inebriated I was. The only thing I can remember is getting in the car, getting to a set of traffic lights, and then nothing. Then waking up about 2 or 3 weeks later in hospital.
Imagine that. Traffic lights, then just nothing. If you're thinking, I'm all good because I don't drink and drive, well, not all serious crashes involve alcohol. Sometimes it's distraction, sometimes fatigue, and sometimes, as we'll soon find out, it's something you can't explain.
There were no skid marks. Maybe it was a micro sleep, maybe there was fatigue. There were no answers.
Welcome back to Scar Tissue, a program about the hidden cost of surviving a serious road crash. Louise Ellery was one of those kids who didn't just have one dream, she had like 10.
As a kid growing up, I wanted to be movie star like everyone else. I was a good kid. I was pretty much friends with everyone, and I played every sport under the sun. I had so many things I wanted to be.
On the other side of the world, Atiq Hassan also had big dreams. Growing up in Pakistan, he was part of a close-knit family of 7 siblings. He trained and worked as a vet, but when his younger brother Ali Hamza moved to Australia, Atiq soon followed.
I was talking to him a lot of the time, and he was telling me about the life standards and education and other things about Australia, and I was pretty excited about it. So I came here on a master's degree, and I'm still studying it. I'm in like 4th semester at the moment.
At the age of 21, Louise moved from Canberra to Brisbane to pursue a modelling career whilst working as an apprentice hairdresser. It felt like she had the world at her feet. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. On the 27th of June, 1998, Louise was involved in a serious single-vehicle road crash with no apparent cause.
I have no recollection of any of that. I've been told I ran into a light pole and the car banana shaped around it, and I abundantly hit my head on the steering wheel, and that caused the damage everywhere.
When a crash happens for no apparent reason, families are left to fill in the blanks themselves.
If she lost control of the car, you'd almost think that there would be skid marks if she was trying to correct it, but there were no skid marks. Maybe it was a micro sleep, maybe there was fatigue. There were no answers.
As hard as it was to accept there were no answers for why Louise crashed, it was even harder for her parents to accept what confronted them when they first arrived at the hospital.
You die 1,000 deaths, and then you eventually get to see her, and she's hooked up. There's a lot of beeping, a lot of tubes, and she's not breathing on her own, and it's scary. She went to CT scan and didn't come back for a very long time, and in the meantime, I just said to Graham, we're losing her. We thought that we wouldn't see her again, that was it.
It was 3:30 in the morning on the 2nd of November 2024 that Atik was doing some Uber driving, trying to earn some extra cash. Heading north on the Federal Highway for his next fare, he wasn't speeding, he wasn't drunk. But what Atik did do was take his eyes off the road for a few seconds.
I was picking up children from my side seat, and I was expecting that my car gonna stay inside the lanes as cruise is on and the lane assist is on. So I was expecting it to stay inside the lanes, but somehow it didn't. My car fell with full speed inside the drainage system. That pain, I think I have never felt that in my life. Even when the ambulance came and the paramedics came, they asked me like, how would you rate the pain out of 10? I told them like, it is more than 10. I have never felt it.
These stories aren't just about the people who survive a serious road crash. They're also about the people who get dragged into it in the worst possible way, especially family.
I was weeping at the moment and my hands were shaking, literally shaking at that time while making call to my father. And when I called him, I was weeping and asking him, Papa, please pray for him. He is in very pain. That was horrible.
3 months of my accident, I visited Pakistan. I went to mosque where my father is going most of the time and he has friends over there. So I met with them and they told me like when my accident happened, my father started visiting mosque, and like he didn't visit the mosque for 3 or 5 days. So like due to me, he was so much worried that he was not even visiting mosque. He was not leaving his home, not even his room. So yeah, kind of. He was so super disturbed. Yeah.
A few seconds of distraction doesn't sound like much until you see what it costs you and what it can cost your family. Now, incredibly, Atik, Louise, Rory, Dylan, and Sherilyn all survived their crashes. But as you'll see, survival is only the beginning.
They advised that there was going to be the point that they would have to amputate due to the blood loss that I had. There's no possibility of repair. And hearing that was such a shock.
Welcome back to Scar Tissue, a program about the hidden costs of surviving a serious road crash. And you know, people talk about the crash like it's the worst part, but most survivors will tell you the crash is just the beginning. And a heads up, some of this stuff you're about to hear is pretty confronting.
I did die multiple times in that sort of first 24-hour period. So, you know, I had lack of oxygen to the brain, and I don't know how I don't have, you know, a brain injury. You know, I don't know how I'm here. The injuries that I remember is the clean break of the head of my right femur. My pelvis was broken, completely detached. I had a fracture to my lower back, and I had the whole blood supply to my left leg severed. My lungs collapsed, filled with air where it shouldn't be and blood. I had kidney failure due to all the trauma to my body. My bladder had exploded. I had a bucket handle injury for my bowel, so a bowel injury, which led to me having to have an emergency colostomy bag. I had to be cut open from like breastbone to pubic bone so they could find out what was going on because I was too fragile to scan.
I completely shattered both my shoulders to the point of needing surgical reconstruction. Almost completely severed a cluster of nerves in my shoulder called the brachial plexus, which left my right arm paralyzed. I damaged, I think, about 80 to 90% of my spine. So it's a miracle I'm walking. I fractured my skull left with some small brain injury, and I split my pelvis in two. I was in a very critical condition.
When they showed us where he was just, there were tubes everywhere. He just looked so battered and so broken. It was, but at the same time, it was, God, thank God he's alive, you know. He's still here. But they were just pulleys and drips and bits and pieces of machines and just everything. And you're just looking at your son lying there and they're still telling you that you're not out of the woods yet.
I had a major head injury, which is obvious probably. I had 6 screws in my head. I think there was a 6% chance of live survival.
I sustained multiple injuries. I got a L1 compressed, so my right leg was not working. It was super numb. L1 nerves, they also provide functionality of the bladder. So it was totally destroyed. So I was unable to be on my own. So they were using catheters. I used that catheter for like 1.5 months because I was unable to pee.
When the doctors told me, when they came in after several days, they advised that there was going to be the point that they would have to amputate due to the blood loss that I had. There's no possibility of repair. And hearing that was such a shock to come to a realisation of, holy shit, I'm going to be an amputee.
Some of the confronting things we see particularly do relate to young people. And it can be very hard to tell a family, parents that have looked after this person since they were a baby, watching them grow up, and now they're a teenager in the intensive care unit. And one of the hardest things is being able to describe for them. They may never quite recover to the same child that you've known all of your life.
I suppose in a very warped way, we were almost expecting a call at some stage due to the environment that Dylan was hanging around. But yeah, when we got there, it's surprising. We were told that he may lose his leg. And of course, we talked to the doctors, because at the early stages, there was the possibility of death. And then we dealt with that. And then the next thing was the possibility of losing a leg.
I guess he held hope that that leg was going to be saved because he had special machinery on there to help to stabilise the leg. It's called external fixation. And unfortunately, during the course of that first few days, it was discovered that really there was going to be no hope for salvaging his leg.
Losing my leg was pretty much one of the toughest times in my life. But yeah, every year in November, it's just a reminder of the devastation that I had on my family and the people around me. Getting word from my mother was the hardest. when I eventually came to, I went out of hospital hearing from what she was told over the phone that she had nonetheless 5 minutes to get to the hospital, otherwise she wouldn't see me again.
When a crash happens, you don't get to choose the outcome. You don't choose the injury, you don't choose the pain, and you don't choose who it affects.
The accident had quite a toll, and not just emotionally. I stopped being just a mother. I also had to become an advocate as well. So he's lying in hospital in a coma. All of a sudden we've got to deal with his loans. We've got phone calls about where he was living, getting him out of there, getting him, get all of this stuff, the cars, moving him out. We had to go to the banks and figure out, what was happening with the loans he had. So it wasn't just the emotional, it was all that other stuff that sat behind it as well.
Coming up, what does life look like after you survive a road crash, but you're left with serious injuries and have to fend for yourself?
After I finished my initial stay in the hospital, I was transferred to a rehab facility. And I was doing all sorts of rehab, especially for my left arm.
Welcome back to Scar Tissue. Surviving a serious crash is one thing. Living with what comes next is another. Rehab kind of takes over your whole life. And the biggest injuries aren't always the ones you can see.
When you're in hospital, it's your safety zone. You've got a nurse you just buzz 5 minutes away, 24 hours, 7 days a week. But when you're at home, you don't have that. And then people will message you and call you and be like, how are you going? How are you coping? Like the first couple of weeks. And then that drops off. And then you're really alone with your mind. And that's when you can sort of realize what's happened.
Some of our young people involved in accidents do make a miraculous recovery and are going to live a life, but they're going to live a life significantly disabled with brain injuries, with a limb deficit. So it's kind of looking at those people and thinking that that's so great that they have their life, but they've also had so much taken from them still. And there's going to be a huge amount of mental trauma that they have to overcome, as well as the physical trauma.
Self-image is definitely one of the harder parts of this. I have a lot of issues with my body before the accident, and now all of a sudden I'm standing in front of a mirror and I've got scars all over my body. So I've been diagnosed with PTSD. I genuinely thought only people who went to war got PTSD. I've had multiple admissions for my mental health, and I'd say multiple to come as well.
You don't think it's going to happen to you, but then when it does, we're on the other side of it, so we see the effects of these road accidents. It's pretty brutal. We see a lot of brain injuries, spinal cord injuries and amputees, and majority of those are from motor vehicle accidents, so I suppose it is quite prevalent, and obviously there's varying degrees of severity. A lot of the ones who we see weekly or really regularly, like Sherilyn, they're on the more severe end of the scale. But I suppose the issue with Sherilyn having her osteointegration implant is that if she were to fall and that implant were to shatter her bone, unfortunately that's walking for her done.
Every time I go out, it's a hassle. I had issues with people when I eventually got back into driving. People harass and criticise me, going, well, what's this doing parking in a disabled car park? And as soon as I get out, the realisation on their face, oh, he's actually disabled. It's like, well, don't judge. And it was just really hard for me to cope with that stress and emotion and depression, that people look at you different.
To watch Dylan go through his emotions has been extremely hard. What I really admire from what he's taken from his trauma, that he will still get up and give anything a go, even if it may mean he's struggling with it, or it may be a lot longer than what he expected for the task to be or anything, but he'll really get in and give it his best shot.
So some of the things that I do take for granted, and that is having that ability to get my dinner and take it to the table. Because of the frustration of having one leg being an amputee, you do get tired and you have that reliance with others to assist.
It still goes through my mind of trying to work out the choices he had made at that point of time of his life. Knowing being young, dumb and stupid really is the way I put of his actions. I still contemplate going, why did you make that decision? Like, I don't understand exactly why you made that choice of getting behind the wheel to where you are now and everything.
Recently I started taking my son Theo to T-ball, and even out just training with him, practicing is quite tiring because I'm constantly standing trying to catch a ball, and every time a ball's overthrown past me to chase it, it's stressful and very draining. It wears me out.
I don't remember what it was like being a newborn baby, but I'm guessing this was how it felt like at that time. You were just trying to do things and you couldn't do them.
Louise Ellery was eventually transferred from Brisbane back home to Canberra to be close to her family after being in a coma for 5 months. Upon regaining consciousness, Louise spent years learning how to talk again, how to walk again, and trying to recapture some of the person she was before her crash.
I used to listen to the radio, and I think that's when Mum and Dad started going, this girl needs to get out and find something to do. They didn't like my music.
Then somebody suggested we take her out to the AIS because there was somebody out there doing wonderful things with kids with disabilities. And they put her in this throwing frame with a shot put. All in all, we settled on doing this and it just grew. And then we were told that she was an outside chance of Athens. And you could have knocked me off my feet.
Louise would go on to represent Australia in the shot put in 4 Paralympics, winning silver in London in 2012 and bronze in Rio in 2016.
After I finished my initial stay in the hospital, I was transferred to a rehab facility, and I was there for about 6 months. And I was doing all sorts of rehab, especially for my left arm, because it was my only functioning arm left, where I had to try and re-strengthen that because it was going to have to do everything my right arm couldn't.
So with survivors of road vehicle crashes, modalities like physiotherapy, exercise physiology are absolutely not something that you're just discharged from hospital and there you go. It's a very, very long-term effort, and for Rory it's certainly something that he's going to have to be managing for the rest of his life.
Healing after a serious crash isn't something you finish. The physical, mental and emotional scars always remain. They just become something you learn to live alongside.
The consequences of major trauma can be really long-standing, and we're talking sort of long-term recovery. People don't just recover and go home in a couple of days and they're back to normal.
Louise is pretty independent, but she still needs a lot of help with a lot of things.
Good morning.
So when Louise is staying here, we help her by helping her organise herself. The first thing that we do is to make her a cup of coffee. She's very shaky, particularly in the morning, so help her with breakfast. Helping her get dressed is fairly straightforward. Whenever there's buttons, I quite often will help with that. And shoes and hair.
Coming up, we're going to see how sometimes the hardest part of healing is opening those scars and letting others see them.
Life is forever changed for many people, just through one decision or one choice that was made in that spur of the moment that they can't ever take back.
You're watching Scar Tissue. I'm Reuben Styles. By now, you've seen what surviving a serious road crash can look like. And I know this stuff can feel like it's happening to other people, but that's what these families thought too. No one thought this would be their story. So what do you tell someone who still thinks it won't happen to them?
I am the Party Program Coordinator. So Party Program stands for Prevent Alcohol and Risk-Related Trauma in Youth. It's really to give students an understanding of the journey of a trauma patient, and that journey really begins at the scene of, say, a road collision.
If you're not comfortable being in the car with someone, don't get in that car with them. Call them out on it. All it takes is that one person to just be like, bro, that's not cool. It could really, really save your life. I had no idea of the impacts. Like, I'm suffering the consequences of my actions now.
So the program is very hands-on, vivid clinical reality. So not only do we put the students into trauma simulations with mannequins, but we also get them to try and understand what it's like to live with a disability, whether it's a short-term or a long-term disability, and do those things that we all take for granted. And one of those activities, which actually it's quite funny to watch and ingenious some of the ways the students manage to do this task, and that's bread buttering with some Vegemite as well if they choose. So they use their non-dominant hand. We also put some goggles on them that impairs their vision, and really what comes out of that is this immense frustration. It really demonstrates to them in that short amount of time how complex that ongoing care and rehab can be. So our injury ambassador talks always at the conclusion of the day. They're getting the lived experience from someone who's actually lived it and is continuing to live it.
So pretty much this is post-amputation. This is, I think, my first review of the wound. I had about 30 odd staples, and they are quite excruciating to get out.
Dylan's presentation was, it was definitely eye-opening again, like everything was today. But, it really made me think about, the actual consequences of, our actions and stuff.
The biggest thing that I learned today was being grateful that I can even walk away from this. Having 2 legs, 2 arms, just being able to be independent is probably one of the best things that happens with a human.
Even something as simple as going, oh, hey, look at this, or getting distracted for a split second has really quite an impact that I didn't really think about before.
It made me stop and think about the decisions I'm making and how much impact that can have on your future, and how aware you have to be of the things you choose to do every day.
And having that stripped away just by going an extra 5 kilometres or having someone else go over 100, just how life is really risky.
Rory, Atik, Sherilyn, Dylan and Louise have been left to reflect over the things they'll miss most. And apart from Louise, they'll never be able to remove from memory the risks they chose to take and the consequences of their actions.
There are still things that I'm struggling with, especially the incontinence with the urine and other things. They still affect me. I used to drive professionally, but now I'm unable to. I can't drive more than half an hour. I can't lift weight. I can't run at the moment.
So I've lost several things from just losing an arm. Putting on a shirt is a unique challenge these days, where I have to slip it up one arm, prop my arm over my head and slide it down my body, which I guess you do that normally, but doing that all with one arm, it's not easy. Opening a bottle, it's gone to the point where I need to either ask for help, put it between my legs, or just use my teeth.
I wanted to have a baby, but the doctor I went to, she said there was a 9 out of 10 chance that pregnancy would kill me.
Prior to my accident, I always thought, nothing will ever happen to me. I'm invincible. I'm a superhero. I believe I could get away with anything, but unfortunately, yeah, you take that for granted and it turns around and you end up living a life off that regret.
What Sherilyn mentions a lot is that it won't happen to me. And I think that although there's ignorance in that, there's also, it's just the reality of you don't expect that you're going to leave the house and end up in a car crash.
But I think what gets me the most is the little girl inside me. You imagine your wedding day and you imagine your first dance. And I remember being in physio walking and I was trying to keep myself stable, so I had my feet out quite wide. And it really hit me that I'm not going to be able to have that moment the way I imagined it.
Before the crash, I was little less responsible when it comes to driving. But after that, I realized, no, it's a responsibility. You're responsible for your own and for the other's life. And it is true. Driving is a big responsibility.
What a lot of people don't realize is the serious impact it has on everyone, not just yourself, but everyone else around you.
It isn't the sort of thing that you expect to happen to you and your family. It's something that never really crosses your mind. You always see your children as being healthy and growing up and living long lives. So,
whatever you do to yourself, what your family experiences is tenfold. They may not have the physical, they may not have the mental, but they have the emotional thing that will last for their life. When you damage yourself, you're damaging 100 people behind you as well.
After hearing all these stories, one thing really sticks with me. No one ever gets behind the wheel planning to hurt themselves or someone else. No one plans to lose an arm or a leg, or worse. Sherilyn, Dylan, Rory, Louise, and Atik, none of them believed the choices they made in a single moment would end up defining their life, but they did.
What I miss most about pre-crash Sherilyn is the freedom, the independence.
The thing I most miss is just having 2 functioning arms.
Advice from myself as an amputee: don't drink and drive.
Cars are a dangerous thing. I mean, look at me.
I can't recall how many times I have played that in my mind, replayed that in my mind as what an idiot I was, that I was reaching for the deodorant, what was the need, why I was doing that.
Learn from the story, not the experience. Like, this is something that you do not want to go through.
To not make that decision that night, I would give literally anything.
I look back and I was an idiot. I was an absolute idiot. Understanding the risks that I was taking, I was an idiot. If I could change it back, I would.
Every day, we share the road with thousands of strangers. Not statistics, just people making decisions in real time. People like me and people like you. But out here, there's no script. Just seconds where a single choice becomes a lifetime consequence. Every choice we make when we're on the road travels much further than we think. And we don't always get to choose where it ends.